Patrick Findaro here with Vetted Biz. I'm really excited to have on John LaRosa, who has well over 30 years of market research. And we've been doing deep dives on a lot of the different industries for basically looking at businesses for sale, as well as franchises for sale. And it's really important before you dive into buying that restaurant down the street or that pawn shop down the street that you look at it from an industry level. And that's what John specializes in, looking at the industry, but then also doing further deep dives upon engagement from his clients. So John, thanks so much for joining us. You've written a lot of reports, and we've published at least 5 articles on the Vetted Biz blog on these kind of industry deep dives. Could you just tell me a little bit how you entered in the market research world and kind of what your focus is?
Yeah, I guess I started in market research about 1979 after a brief stint in teaching. I was going to teach foreign languages and then decided I wanted to switch into business instead because it was more lucrative and just more in line with my personal interest. So I've had a passion to do market research since the late 1970s, working for 4 different companies before going out on my own and pursuing our company, Marketdata, full-time.
When did you establish Marketdata?
When?
What year did you found it?
1979.
Wow, it's incredible.
So I had worked for a small market research company on Long Island in New York, and just loved the work. It's like being an investigative journalist, where you put all the pieces of a puzzle together in terms of what makes an industry tick, and the nuances and characteristics of it. And it never got boring because I was looking at a different industry every 2 months. So it's not like I was an analyst just for the automotive industry or the construction industry all year long. I was looking at 6 or 7 different industries every year, and each one has its own story. So it just became very interesting to me, and I decided I wanted to do that full time.
And
so
when did you make the move down to Florida?
Moved to Florida in 1996. So I've been in Tampa for about 25 years now.
Okay. And Tampa's probably changed a lot since you came down in 1996.
Oh yeah, it's grown a lot. And we just moved here for lifestyle reasons. Just, real estate was getting really expensive in New York, and we were just starting our family back then. So it was a lot cheaper to buy a house and live the kind of lifestyle that I wanted. I like to play golf and, be outdoors in the sunshine, even during the winter months. So Tampa fit the bill for us.
Yeah, I grew up right outside Washington, D.C., went to college in New England, and my parents are actually both from Manhasset on Long Island. And,
oh, yeah.
I lived a couple years in New York, but for me, it was just too fast paced. And I do prefer the lifestyle in Florida.
Exactly.
And there's just a lot to offer, and it's really exciting. Cities like Miami and Tampa are changing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a positive way after the pandemic, with this whole work from home or work nearby home.
Yeah, growing up in New York, we never heard about any news from Tampa, but now we have all these championship teams, between the Bucks and the Rays and the Bolts and hockey. We've got all these champion sports teams now. So I guess we're getting on the map the last 10 years.
And going back to Vetted Biz, we're mostly focused on individual investors, although there have been private equity firms that leverage the insights that we have, especially on the franchising and business for sale industry. Do you have similar type of clients that buy your industry reports and engage your services for market research? Could you tell me a little bit about the type of clients you work with?
Yeah, the reports that we do are generally what's known as off-the-shelf studies, which are produced for a mass audience. And so the buyers of our reports could be entrepreneurs, investors, banks, ad agencies, consulting firms, trade associations, pretty broad
Pretty
audience.
diverse.
Yeah, and frequently when somebody buys one of our reports, they're doing due diligence about a specific company or an industry that they may want to get into or acquire a company. So we get a lot of merger and acquisition candidates and private equity firms that are looking to invest in a specific company, maybe buy them out and invest in them. So they buy our off-the-shelf studies, but frequently they want a deeper dive into a specific part of the country, either a regional analysis or a competitor analysis or a market potential analysis for a new product or service coming out. And we'll do custom studies and consulting for them as well. So it really varies. Our bread and butter business is the off-the-shelf studies, but we frequently do consulting and custom projects.
And I mean, do you have any advice for whether it's a private equity investor or someone that's, quitting their corporate job in New York City or the Northeast and moving down to Florida and they want to buy a business or open up a franchise? Where would you start if you were in their position?
Well, I think the mistake a lot of people make when they're about to invest in a business or spend several $100,000 to buy a franchise, for example, is they don't do market research. A lot of times people don't even know or understand what market research is. But it's like if you went to buy a new car, you do research online, you look at consumer reports, you look at reports about how reliable the car is.
Safety, especially if you have kids.
Yeah, gas mileage. You do all kinds of research online before actually going to the dealership. But a lot of people skip that first step to do market research, to do their due diligence, to find out, is this a good industry right now? Is it growing? Is it crowded? Is it oversaturated? Is there room for more growth? Is the industry being regulated by some government agency? Is it undergoing some transformation technology-wise? Is it popular with consumers? What are the trends affecting the business? So, a lot of people don't do that, and it's a big mistake because they could be investing their life savings into an industry that's on the way down. And, you want to try and avoid the pitfalls and pick industries that are growing and don't have any special circumstances so that, you can maximize your chance for success. So
why is it like, you think it like buying a small business or investing in a franchise for an individual investor can be like a very emotional decision and they're swindled by a smooth sales guy? Why are people not necessarily always doing their research on the industry level first?
I think they don't know that a lot of information exists and is out there free or for a very low cost. Like, for example, the Census Bureau, the US Census Bureau, has a bunch of different surveys that they do, like the economic census. There's the census of wholesale trade, retail trade, manufacturing, and service industries. And all of this information and statistics and great content is available free if you know where to look. And you can find it easily online. Market research is not magic, and
it takes time.
It takes time. It's kind of painstaking and boring to a lot of people, but it's work that you really have to do if you want to prepare yourself and get into the right business. It's well worth the effort.
Yeah, to get in the right business and avoid the ones that aren't looking so hot.
Mm-hmm. It's not, market research is not, it's not rocket science. Anybody can do it if you have the tenacity and the patience to find the statistics and information. So, you know, like I tell people, you don't need any special degree to do market research. It's just it's grunt work. It's getting on the phone and talking to people and interviewing them. It's looking at different websites. It's finding articles about a business or an industry that has been put out by reporters or other research organizations. So, you know, a lot of people don't like to do research, but that's why we do it, to take that load off of people's minds. And, you know, we're good at it, we're efficient at it, and we know where to go to find the relevant information. So,
and I think it was in one of your study, you were conducting one of your studies, and that's how you entered into contact with us at Vetted Biz, right?
Yes, yes. Mm-hmm.
And I know, yeah, you've produced a lot of different reports, and part of the reports as kind of like a teaser are highlighted on the Vetted Biz, vettedbiz.com blog.
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell us just like what industries that you would put your money in, or that you think are worthwhile for individual or institutional investors to look at based on different factors like growth rate over the next 5-10 years? Because I know you've looked at so many industries, and I'd be curious just to hear from you, you know, what industry piques your interest the most?
Yeah, I think, you know, obviously COVID and the pandemic has affected a lot of industries and markets, some more than others. And a lot of personal service and healthcare sectors were hurt by the pandemic, but they're bouncing back. And one example of that, where you have a very personal service where, you know, it has to be delivered in person, it can't be delivered online or digitally, is nail salons. The nail salon industry is a very interesting one. It was started by Vietnamese women that came over here in the 1970s after
I think largely refugees started the whole industry here.
After the war, they came over, and a group of them in California were kind of recruited by one of the actresses, Tippi Hedren, and she kind of took them under her wing and got them to be admitted to beauty schools in California, and they taught them how to do nails, you know, being manicurists and do all these nail services. And from there, it just kind of grew into an industry that's still dominated by Vietnamese women, but has really spread across the country. And I would say right now, the industry is worth about 6.5 billion. I'm just looking at a couple of notes here from our report. There's about 28,000 nail salons in the country. Wow. And the typical nail salon revenues are about $287,000 per year in 2019.
And did you deduce that from the census data? How do you get the figure on the per unit revenue?
Yeah, the census data has information on the number of nail salons and their receipts or revenues. So, you know, just divide the receipts by the number of nail salons and you get the average revenue per salon.
So the average is doing, what was it, 280,000 in top line revenue sales?
287,000, right? And
do you know like an estimated profit margin, like how much the owner can take out of a business like that, a nail salon?
Yeah, about 17%.
Not
so
bad.
But the point is, that's just the average, and there's a lot of nail salons that do much higher than that average. It can go all the way up to 575,000, depending on the state and the location and the metro area and how affluent that area is and the kind of services they provide. So, you know, when you get up to 575,000 and a 17% profit margin, it's possible for the owner to make $50,000 to $100,000 a year. And it's a business that is growing and it is rebounding as these businesses are reopening. In 2021, last year was a tough year and a lot of the nail salons were closed, at
Sure.
least temporarily.
And probably labor issues too, right?
Yeah, yeah. Um,
For the
so,
nail salon in particular, and I guess also just like barbershops and those industries that, especially in Florida, were more contractors, 1099s, and they didn't necessarily have to be an actual employee of the business, a W-2. But California, you got to, from what I understand, you have to be an employee, a W-2, and that's going to increase the cost to the owner of the business. Have you
right.
done any research on that in terms of like impacts on just regulation changes for the nail salon industry as well as overall personal services?
Yeah, well, it usually varies state by state. I think California may be a little more restrictive
Sure.
than some other states. I think the nail salons are going to continue to use a lot of subcontractors, to avoid paying benefits, expensive benefits. So, I don't see that changing on a nationwide basis that much. But only about 3.5% of nail salons are part of a franchise. There are some, there's probably about a half a dozen franchises in the industry. And so there's a lot of room for growth, in terms of more franchises to develop in this industry in the future. And California, New York have the greatest number of nail salons. Probably almost 9,000 combined in 2019. So, we go into a lot of the metrics and the evolution of the industry and the status report and how it's bounced back from the pandemic in our reports. And, visitors to your website can see the article that we have there, which is a lot of great content.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I loved, one of my colleagues uploaded the article, formatted it, then I went through and I didn't realize how small the market was in terms of franchise and license locations. I would imagine it would have been like 10 to 20% of the market. So there does seem like there's quite some room for growth, for having a business model and brand name. And yeah, like you said, opening one store at a 17% profit margin, you're not making so much money. But if you have 5 of those 280K stores, or some of them are doing 500K, they can probably provide a pretty good livelihood for you and your family.
Sure. Another sector that we've looked at over the years, probably for about 20 years, is the commercial cleaning industry, janitorial services. And there's a good number of franchises in that sector that are well established, that have been around for decades. And commercial cleaning, that was another sector that kind of took a hit during the pandemic because a lot of offices were closed.
Sure. There's no need probably for 3 months. And I know the banks and the insurance companies, at least in Miami, are just going back to the office now. And it's been like 18 months.
Yeah, I think the growth of the commercial office space has taken a hit last year because companies are realizing that more of their employees can operate virtually and telecommute, so they don't need as much office space. But even when office space is vacant, it still has to be cleaned periodically, dusted, and heating, ventilation, and air conditioning systems have to be maintained and run to make sure that they're still functional. So, and then you get into disaster restoration services.
I imagine it's mostly the landlord who's paying for the commercial cleaning, or is it the tenant, the company that's occupying the space?
It can be both.
Okay.
Yeah, but commercial cleaning has it's always going to be in demand, and it covers so many things, like not just janitorial services like cleaning the restrooms and emptying the trash, but it involves parking lot maintenance and security and heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems, pest control, disinfecting and pest control, also restroom maintenance and sometimes disaster restoration, parking lot maintenance, security, a lot of that stuff. Like ABM Industries is a good example of that. I don't believe they're a franchise, but they're so diversified into all kinds of building maintenance services. And that's a good example of what the industry does. So
have you done any research on the residential cleaning side? Because I know, our clients have asked about it in the past, and I'm not a big fan, given you don't have that steady client, you're not dealing with a professional, you're dealing with an individual, much slower check size. Have you done any research on the residential side as well, or has it been mostly focused on commercial?
Well, we did a study about 5 years ago about the maid services market.
Sure.
And that covers, people that clean consumers' homes. And there are a significant number of franchises there, like Merry Maids and Molly Maids, Maid to Perfection, Service Master. There's probably about 10 franchise organizations in that space. I'm not sure, we didn't look at that sector in the last year or so, so I'm not sure how hard they were hit by the recession and the pandemic, but I would imagine they were also affected because it's a personal service and you're coming into close contact with the people because they're coming to your home. So I would imagine that sector is bouncing back as well. And it's something that more and more American households are used to, and they don't consider it a luxury, they consider it a necessity.
Yeah, and
Just
if you're
like-
spending more time in the house and working from home, you're more perceptive of what's wrong and what needs to be properly made in your own house, not just the office.
Right. And just like going back to the nail salons business, I think American women consider getting their nails done as more of an affordable luxury and a necessity rather than a luxury.
Okay.
$25 to $50, you can go get your nails done, and it boosts your self-esteem, makes you feel better, and that attitude is not going to change in the future. So there's going to be a continuing demand for that fairly inexpensive, affordable luxury. And that's why we feel strongly about nail salons bouncing back and seeing good growth over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah. And I guess if you compare it to some other luxury like massage or different spa treatments, I mean, it's going to be 5x, 10x that price if you go to a proper place.
Right. So, okay, so commercial cleaning is another good sector that's in demand all the time, really. Another one that we like is the physical therapy centers. And we have a report on that. And that's a sector that's very interesting, that is also growing because the population is aging.
Sure.
And the baby boomers are aging, and even though they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s now, they still want to go out and jog and ride a bike and play basketball and do all these sports. So you get the weekend warrior syndrome, where they go out and do things that they shouldn't do, and they wind up breaking their ankle or spraining their ankle or breaking their leg or skiing or whatever. So there's a lot of injuries there that you'll see on an annual basis, and physical therapy centers provide the solution to getting back in shape. So that's an interesting one where we find that the average facility does about $800,000 a year nationwide. And there's about 40,000 physical therapy centers or clinics out there. It's basically a $30 billion industry. And also the reason why physical therapy centers are in demand is because the outlook for reimbursement from insurance has been favorable even during economic recessions because of the cost saving that comes into play with outpatient rehabilitation rather than having somebody in a facility, inpatient setting. So, that's another reason why the industry will be growing.
So you get a big boost from the government through public insurance or even on the private sector where they're happy to pay for these outpatient physical therapy.
Yeah, even Medicare and Medicaid, because it saves money over the long run. Not too many franchises in that industry, but there are about 4 or 5 of them that we've been able to identify. There's PT Solutions is one, and Physical Therapy Now, Physical, Apex Network. There's about 5 franchises there that present some opportunity.
And do you see opportunity for consolidation and franchises growing in chains, or is the business better suited for a single unit operator?
No, there's definitely room for multiple site operations. Most of the, it's a competitive, fragmented industry with a lot of small physical therapy centers and one site operations.
Okay.
But more and more of them, I think you can see more and more franchises develop in that industry. One thing I will mention about a sector that's popular, but may not necessarily be the best choice to get into right now is weight loss.
Okay.
There are so many weight loss centers out there, both commercial and medical programs, and people may think that weight loss is a booming field to get into in terms of franchises. Well, yes and no. For example, on the commercial side, you have companies like Jenny Craig and Weight Watchers. Jenny Craig, I'm not sure if they're currently selling any franchises. I don't believe they are. And Weight Watchers is basically a closed system where you can only get in by getting a franchise that's owned by a relative. You or I couldn't go out and buy a Weight Watchers franchise right now if we wanted to, unless—
That's kind of like Domino's Pizza, where you have to be an employee and then you can get awarded a franchise. And I think Dutch Bros Coffee, they just went public, same kind of system. There's a lot of great systems like Domino's that you have to already be in their ecosystem, and it's very difficult to get a license to operate one.
Yeah, it's nearly impossible with Weight Watchers. So on the commercial side, there's not really that many weight loss companies that are selling franchises, with one exception. There's a company called Profile by Sanford, which was started by Sanford Health out in the Midwest. And they're a very large healthcare system. And they have a kind of a retail weight loss center operation where they have their own brand of diet food and meal replacements and supplements that they sell. So, and they've been growing very fast, very rapidly as a franchise over the last 5 years. So that
we still have like a major issue with obesity in the United States. And I mean, just so many health issues are caused by obesity. So I can only imagine the potential for this market.
Sure. Yeah, the obesity rates are not going down. They're leveling off or even still increasing. And, people talking about the pandemic 15, people have gained weight even more during the pandemic because staying home and eating comfort food and stress-related eating and things like that. So weight loss.
We have a little more pressure in Miami Beach, where you're going to the beach and you're seeing, a swimsuit to make sure you're in shape, compared to, cold areas of the Midwest where no one sees how you look underneath all those jackets.
Right. And on the medical side, there are probably about 10 different franchise organizations, but it can be tricky, and you do need a medical doctor to oversee the program.
So these would be like urgent care clinics, or what side on the medical exactly?
No, these would be weight loss clinics,
Oh, okay. So on the
but
weight loss.
it's a medical protocol where you may be taking prescription drugs, appetite suppressants, and you meet in person with a counselor, and you have lab tests done every month. So it's a little more strict of a program than commercial weight loss centers. And you may be counseled by a nurse or a physician's assistant with a doctor himself. So, it's a little more tightly regulated in terms of
and drawing a parallel with the physical therapy space, where insurance is providing a nice kicker for those entrepreneurs running a physical therapy center. Do you see that in the weight loss center space, especially on the medical side, that people are using insurance to pay for the treatment?
Yeah, although it can vary. A lot of insurance companies still don't cover weight loss programs, but some do. There are various ways that the patient can finance the program. There's IRS tax credits that you can take. There's care credit is used by a lot of doctors, where you can pay for the program through installments. So frequently insurance is used, but a fair amount of the time it's out of pocket also. So the thing is, on the commercial side of the weight loss market, the trend right now seems to be with online programs or digital programs, and apps like Noom is very popular right now. So that's why I would take a wait and see attitude
before you open up a franchise in a physical location.
Yeah, I mean, right now, and even Weight Watchers is going through a transformation right now, where they couldn't see the people in person at their centers, so they had to switch over to a digital model, and they're encountering more competition from companies like Noom that are just apps, or
already have been doing that.
Yeah, so they'll bounce back eventually, but I would say the growth right now for weight loss centers is not as good as some other sectors.
Well stated. Are there any other industries in terms of closing out our discussion today that you'd like to highlight, John?
Those are the three that really come to mind out of the recent research that we've done, that look positive to us. And a lot of other industries are kind of in a holding pattern or wait and see mode, and see how they've been transformed by the pandemic and how they bounce back. So
from what you've said today, I mean, I would be interested the most in physical therapy, given the top line average revenue of 800,000, growth rate of 7%. That seems like a pretty promising industry. And, there in the US, it's so competitive. It's generally, the more complexity there is, physical therapy is going to be more complex than operating a simple cell phone repair business. But with that complexity, I imagine higher margins, higher sales, et cetera. Yeah. So the point is to do your homework before investing in any business, especially a franchise that's going to cost several $100,000 or more. Take the time to do the market research, do the due diligence, like the private equity firms and the banks and the consultants of the world do. Save yourself a lot of time and effort and money
by doing market research because, you may think that a business is a great one to invest in, but only after doing that research will you be able to see what the red flags are and to really evaluate a business accurately to see if you're getting the full story. I know in the past, some franchise organizations have painted an overly rosy picture of some businesses. And usually there's two sides to the story, and every business has its ups and downs, and every business has its red flags and capability for weathering recessions and downturns. And you have to be aware of that because we're not always going to be in an expansion mode. Recessions come along every 4 or 5 years. So you want a business that's going to weather those downtimes as well as the good times.
For sure. And I mean, highlighting some of your points today, and also one that consumer tastes can't, subtly change with technology shifts. So, weight loss, let's see what happens if it goes more to the online and app space. We've seen that happen with fitness, where now people have changed the habit where they're not necessarily going to the gym or their boutique fitness studio and they're competing with the apps. But as you mentioned with the nail salon, it seems like the consumers came back and there was a couple months that it was down, but they want their nails done and they want it on a periodic basis.
Yep.
So yeah, I think it's really helpful for anyone that wants to start a business, buy an existing business, start a franchise. Start first with the industry. Marketdata has a lot of information. We publish some parts of the reports in a bridged version on Vetted Biz. And then from there, you can dive into the actual business for sale or the franchise opportunity, then talk to franchisees to really confirm the numbers. But yeah, I think everyone really needs to do their own due diligence. And you can buy a report from John and his firm and save you a lot of time and money by not investing in the wrong industry. Or like John said, you could do it yourself. A lot of the information is public, but I don't know. How long does it take you to conduct one of these reports, John, with having 40 years of experience with this?
A typical industry study for us will take about 2 months, 6 to 8 weeks to do. So we really do a thorough job. We look at trade associations information, the Census Bureau, published articles on the internet, 10Ks, annual reports. There's other research firms that do part of the research for us. Dun & Bradstreet, Bloomberg, we do a lot of telephone surveys. We try to leave no stone unturned. And that's why people have purchased our reports for 40 years, because we're completely unbiased and objective. Exactly. If the industry is doing well, we say that. If the industry is not doing well, we say that too, because we want the people that buy our reports to be fully informed and to know the complete story, not just half the story.
Exactly. So, it's a long-term approach, because I mean, they're going to tell their friends that are going to come back to you. Yeah, I mean, we're pretty similar ethos here at Vetted Biz, where we want to get all the information out there and not paint a rosy story about a particular franchise or business opportunity.
Yeah, and I have to congratulate you, Patrick, for putting together this website and all this content. It's really valuable. It's really essential information, great content, and you're to be commended for putting this together and making it available to the consumer and the prospective business buyer. It's a really necessary role that you're filling, and thank you for that.
No, thanks, John. Yeah, it's definitely a team effort. I mean, my brother and I founded Vetted Biz just a couple of years back, but now we have 20 plus employees. So we're not slowing down anytime soon. And we just want to continue to democratize this information flow, especially for the startup, franchise, and business for sale space.
Great, great.
So the more that we can have experts like yourself onto our YouTube channel, if you're listening on a podcast, the better it is for the current entrepreneur, maybe serial entrepreneur, or someone that's just looking to go into entrepreneurship for the first time.
Great, glad to help out.